Hello everyone, welcome to the fifth edition of our seminar series. Today we'll discuss Soddy-Fajan's law and law of radioactive disintegration. Let me introduce you to my team members, Maria Emmanuel, Ashika Ravindran, Noel John, Abhinav Sebastian and myself. Now let us look into the content. The whole seminar is divided into two parts. In the first part, we will discuss Soddy-Fajan's law, law of radioactive disintegration and its equation. And towards the second half, we will have a look at different applications of nuclear physics. Now let us move on to our first topic, that is Soddy-Fajan's law. Under this topic, we will get to see a brief history of radioactivity and also the Soddy-Fajan's displacement law. This topic will be taken by Noel John, and I invite Noel for a discussion on this topic.
Today we are going to discuss about Soddy-Fajan's law. Before we get into it, I would like to talk a little bit of the history of radioactivity. In March 1896, Henry Becquerel accidentally invented radioactivity in uranium. This was the foundation of a new science branch. Later, in 1899, Ernest Rutherford made a very significant discovery. He contributed to this new science branch by discovering alpha as well as beta rays. In the beginning of 20th century, Marie Curie and Pierre Curie coined the phenomena and given the term as radioactivity. They also discovered radium as well as polonium, which also has radioactivity features. Another major discovery on radioactivity was in 1913 by Frederick Soddy and Casimir Fajans. Their independent work led to the formation of new radioactive displacement, and later it was known as Soddy-Fajan's law, which we are going to discuss in the next few minutes. The law of radioactive displacement, aka Soddy-Fajan's law, is a rule governing the transformation of elements during the radioactive decay. We know that radioactive decay is the process by which an unstable atomic nucleus loses energy by radiation. During this process, the parent element undergoes decay and gets transformed into another element. The concept of decay is similar to the decay of fruits and vegetables. We all know how a vegetable gets decayed and gets decomposed as minerals. Same thing is happening during a radioactive decay. The only difference is that here emission of certain radiation from the parent element is the reason behind the decay. So, through this law of radioactive displacement, Soddy or Fajan is trying to give a kind of pattern for the transformation of elements. In order to create a law regarding this matter, they considered certain things. Let us call them as facts or factors. The first one is that the atom of radioactive elements are really unstable. We know everything in the nature have a tendency to attain stability. This is why radioactive decay takes place and the parent element gets transformed into a new element. When we take a look into this new element, we can see that it is entirely new. Even its physical, chemical as well as the radioactive properties are different from its parent element. Now we are getting into the core and most beautiful part of Soddy-Fajan's law. In order to find the answers for all their questions, Soddy and Fajan studied the product elements of disintegration of many radioactive elements and reached at some conclusions. At first, they studied the case of alpha decay. When a radioactive atom emits an alpha ray, the mass number of the new element will be less by 4 units and the atomic number is less by 2 units than those of the parent atom. I would like to share an example where uranium-238-92 undergoes alpha decay and forms thorium-234-90 and a helium alpha particle. If we compare uranium and thorium, we can see a decrease in mass number by 4 units and atomic number by 2 units, which satisfies the first part of our law. Beta emission. Secondly, they considered the case of beta emission. When a radioactive atom emits beta ray, the new atom formed has the same mass number but the atomic number increases by 1 unit. Consider the example where thorium-23490 undergoes beta decay to form palladium-23491. Here, we can see that there is no change in mass number, but there is an increase in atomic number of palladium by 1 unit. The third and final conclusion is that when a radioactive atom emits gamma ray, there is no change in atomic number or mass number. Therefore, its place in periodic table has no change. These ideas are together called as Soddy-Fajans law. So, thank you.
Thank you, Noel. Now let us move on to our next topic, that is law of radioactive disintegration. Under this topic, you will get to know more about radioactive decay and also the law of radioactivity. This topic will be taken by Maria Emmanuel, and I invite Maria for a discussion on this topic.
Hi friends, myself Maria Emmanuel. First of all, thank you Noel for your wonderful presentation. The topic was very clear for us. So I am here before you to explain about radioactive decay and law of radioactive decay. So we can first learn what a radioactive decay is. Friends, are you guys remembering what is radioactive decay? Okay, I will explain it for you. Before learning what is radioactive decay, we can first understand some basic history regarding the discovery of radioactive decay. So, it's in 19th century, Henry Becquerel discovered that some chemical elements have atoms that change over time. In 1898, Marie and Pierre Curie called this phenomena radioactive decay. Becquerel and Curie were awarded the Nobel Prize in Physics for the discovery in 1903. So we can come back to radioactive decay. What is radioactive decay? Radioactive decay is a process by which an unstable atomic nuclei loses energy by radiation, and this is also known as nuclear decay, radioactive disintegration or nuclear disintegration. A material containing unstable nuclei is considered as radioactive. Also, this radioactive decay is a very random process at the level of a single atom. According to quantum theory, it is impossible to predict when a particular atom will decay, regardless of how long the atom has existed. However, for a significant number of identical atoms, the overall decay rate can be expressed as a decay constant or as half-life. The decay nucleus in the radioactive decay is also called parent radionuclide or parent radioisotope, and the process actually produces at least one daughter nuclide. Now we are going to learn about the different types of radioactive decays. There are mainly three most common types of decays. They are alpha decay, beta decay and gamma decay. These portions are already detailed by our last group. Now we can have a small discussion about this topic. First of all, alpha decay. Alpha decay occurs when the nucleus ejects an alpha particle. Then the beta decay. The beta decay actually occurs in two different ways. One is beta minus decay and the other is beta plus decay. Beta minus decay. Beta minus decay occurs when the nucleus emits an electron and an antineutrino in a process that changes a neutron to photon. Then about the beta plus decay, it occurs when the nucleus emits a positron and a neutrino in a process that changes a proton to a neutron. This process is also known as positron emission. Then moving on to the gamma decay. In gamma decay, a radioactive nucleus first decays by the emission of an alpha or beta particle, and the daughter nucleus that results is usually left in an excited state, and it can decay to a lower energy state by emitting a gamma ray photon. So that's all about different types of radioactive decays. So now we are going to understand what is the law of radioactive decay. Radioactive decay law is also known as Rutherford and Soddy theory. The formulation of this radioactive decay law is in 1902 by Ernst Rutherford and Frederick Soddy, and hence this law is named as Rutherford and Soddy theory. The radioactive decay law was part of large number of discoveries around the turn of the century, which actually paved the way to the establishment of quantum mechanics. Next, we can move on to the statement of radioactive decay law. Radioactive decay law states that the probability per unit time that a nucleus will decay is a constant which is independent of time, and this constant is called radioactive decay constant and is denoted by lambda. The higher the value of the decay constant, then the more radioactive it will be, and the more likely that the nuclei will undergo radioactive decay in the first place. Also, the radioactive decay of a certain number of atoms is exponential in time. This radioactive decay law is a universal law that describes the statistical behavior of a large number of nuclides. So that's all about my topic. Hope that it's clear for you all. Thank you for giving me such a wonderful opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Maria. Now let us move on to our next topic, that is the mathematical explanation for the radioactive disintegration. Under this topic, you will get to see the equation of radioactive decay and also the graph which represent radioactive disintegration. This topic will be taken by Ashika Ravindran, and I invite Ashika for a discussion on this topic.
Hi friends, in this session I am going to talk about the mathematical explanation of radioactive decay law, that is the derivation and the graph of radioactive decay law. Before moving to the derivation, let us discuss about the significance, the importance of radioactive decay law. Okay, what is radioactive decay? Radioactive decay is the spontaneous breaking of unstable nucleus, right? And there are different kinds of radioactive decays. Which are they? Alpha decay, beta decay and gamma decay. And they are all different from each other. Mainly we can say that they emit different particles, right? Alpha decay emits alpha particles, beta decay emits electrons or positrons, gamma decay emits gamma rays. However, there is a common between these processes. What is that? The mathematical expression which tells how the number of atoms changes with time is common for all. And that expression is given by the radioactive decay law. This is the significance. Once again, the significance of radioactive decay law is that the law helps us to find out the number of atoms left at a particular time t. Okay. And the radioactive decay law states that the rate of disintegration is directly proportional to the number of atoms present at that time, or specifically we can say that the total number of nuclei present at that time. And we should remember that during disintegration, either a alpha particle or a beta particle or a gamma particle is emitted by the atom. The emission of all of them is impossible at a time. At a time, only one emission is possible. Okay. So we are moving on to the derivation by considering N0, the number of atoms or nuclei at t is equal to 0 at initial time. N, the number of undecayed atom at time t. Dn, the number of nuclei that undergo decay at dt. So mathematically we can represent the law as dn by dt. The rate of disintegration is directly proportional to n, the total number of atoms present at that time. And there is a negative sign on n that shows the number of nuclei decreases with increase in time. To change the proportionality, we are multiplying by a constant called lambda. So our equation becomes dn by dt is equal to minus lambda n, where lambda is called the decay constant or disintegration constant. For a given element, the value of lambda is constant, but it is different for different element. That is, lambda depends only on the nuclei which we are taken. It doesn't depend on temperature or pressure. It only depends on the nuclei which we have taken. On rearranging the equation by taking n to the left hand side, dt to the right hand side, our equation becomes dn by n is equal to minus lambda dt. On integrating, we get integral. And as I earlier said, the number of atoms varies from n0 to n as the time varies from 0 to t. By applying that limit, that is integral n0 to n, dn by n is equal to minus integral 0 to t lambda dt. Lambda is a constant, so that can be taken to outside. So we can write as minus lambda integral 0 to t dt. Integral n0 to n dn by n. It is in the form of integral 1 by x dx. And we know that 1 by x dx is log x. So integral n0 to n dn by n is log n. By substituting the limits, we get log to the base en minus log to the base en0 is equal to, on the right hand side, integral 0 to t dt. Where we have integral dx is x. So integral dt is t. On applying limit, we get minus lambda t. And we have log a minus log b is log a by b. By substituting that, we get log to the base en minus n0 is equal to minus lambda t. Applying anti-log on both sides. So we get n by n0 is equal to e raised to minus lambda t. n0 taken to the right hand side. So we get the final equation as n is equal to n0 e raised to minus lambda t. This is the equation which tells how the number of atoms changes with the time. The exponential factor with a negative sign shows that the number of atoms decreases exponentially with the time. The number n depends on the decay constant lambda and the time t. From the expression n is equal to n0 e raised to minus lambda t, we can plot a graph with number of undecayed nuclei n on y-axis and time t on the x-axis. So we get an exponential curve like this. We can see that at t equal to 0, the number of undecayed nuclei is n0. At time t half, it is reduced to n0 by 2. At the time 2t half, it is reduced to n0 by 4 and again reduced to n0 by 8 and so on. So we can say that after a lapse of t half, that is t half, 2t half, 3t half and so on, the number of atoms drops by a factor of 2, that is n0, n0 by 2, n0 by 4 and so on. So in general, we can say that initially the decay takes place at faster rate. As time increases, n gradually decreases exponentially. Theoretically, an infinite time is required for the complete disintegration of all atoms. That is, when t equal to infinity, n becomes 0. For the complete disintegration, t must become infinity. That's all about the graph. And next, there is a question related to our equation. In a sample, there are originally 2.88 into 10 raised to 20 radioactive nuclei. The decay constant is 0.1 minute inverse. Calculate the number of radioactive nuclei remaining after 1 hour. It's a simple question, all the values are given. We only need to substitute this to our equation. N is equal to n0 e raised to minus lambda t. Originally there are 2.88 into 10 raised to 20 radioactive nuclei. That is n0 is equal to 2.88 into 10 raised to 20. The decay constant lambda is equal to 0.1 minute inverse. And the time t is 1 hour. So we must convert it to minute because the decay constant is in minute. So t is equal to 1 hour, that is equal to 60 minutes. And our equation is n is equal to n0 e raised to minus lambda t. On substituting this, we get the final result as 7.14 into 10 raised to 17 atoms are remain, or 7.14 into 10 raised to 17 radionuclei are there after 1 hour. That's all about my topic. Thank you.
Thank you, Ashika. So friends, that's all about the theory part of our discussion. And now let us recap what we have learned. For that, I invite Abhinav Sebastian for a brief summary of the topics.
I hope everyone understood our topics. I will give a recap of our topic. We started discussing about Soddy-Fadden's displacement law, where we study the history, factors, and the law. Soddy-Fadden's law governs the transformation of an element during radioactive decay. Then we study alpha decay. When a radioactive atom emits an alpha particle, the mass number of the new element will be less by 4 units, and the atomic number will be less by 2 units than those of parent atom. Then we move on beta decay. When a radioactive element emits a beta particle, the mass number of the newly element remains unchanged, but the atomic number increases by 1. Then gamma decay. When a radioactive atom emits a gamma ray, the new atom formed has no change in atomic number or mass number. Then we study the law of radioactive disintegration, which states that the probability per unit time that a nucleus will decay is a constant independent of time. Then we derive an equation which gives the result n is equal to n0 e raised to minus lambda t, which is one of the main and very important equation which is applicable in competitive examination from this portion. Then we see a graph related to radioactivity which gives the idea that the number of atoms of radioactive substance decreases exponentially with increasing time. Thank you everyone.
Thank you, Abhinav. Now friends, that would be the end of the first half of our discussion. And like I said in the beginning, there will be a second half wherein we will discuss the applications of nuclear physics. This topic will be taken by myself, and by the end of the discussion, you will get to know how the power which was introduced to save the world ended up in a position where it could end the world. Now let us get into the topic. So, as far as the content is concerned, first we will have a look at the working principle of a nuclear reactor. Then we'll see what happened at Chernobyl. Remember friends, only if you understand the working principle of a nuclear reactor, you will be able to understand the Chernobyl disaster. And in the end, we'll see what is the future of nuclear energy as a source of electricity. Now let us understand the working of a nuclear reactor. First of all, what is a nuclear reactor? A nuclear reactor is nothing but a thermal power plant itself, but it uses the energy of a nuclear fission reaction for the generation of electricity. So what's inside a nuclear reactor? The main part is a reactor core. Within the reactor core, there are three main parts, which are the fuel elements, the moderator, and the control rods. These radioactive fuel elements are allowed to bombard with neutrons. As a result, it triggers a nuclear fission reaction, which result in the release of heat energy into the surrounding. In the surrounding, what do we have? We have the moderator. And what is the function of a moderator? Moderator simply absorbs the heat and deliver it to the heat exchanger where the steam is produced. Is it the only function of the moderator? No. The moderator also functions as a speed breaker. Now what is a speed breaker? See friends, if the neutrons are traveling too fast, it is less likely to result in meaningful or effective collision. So in order to reduce the speed of this neutron, moderator act as a speed breaker. Usually deuterium or water is used as moderator. Now, the third component is the control rods. What is the function of a control rod? The control rod simply absorbs the excess amount of neutrons present inside the reactor core, which would otherwise result in an explosion. And friends, if you ask me one question, is this the only way by which a reactor could explode? I would say no. But why? Because there is another way. What is that? The moderator also functions as a coolant. What if the level of coolant is too low? When the level of coolant is too low, the temperature inside the reactor core increases considerably. As a result, the fuel elements will melt and the fuel elements will turn into gaseous stage where the pressure inside the reactor core increases largely. As a result, there is a possibility of explosion due to high pressure inside the reactor core. So friends, that's all about the working principle of a nuclear reactor. Now let us move on to our next topic, which is the Chernobyl disaster. Before I begin, I would like to reveal that I got this idea of discussing Chernobyl with you from the previous group's discussion, and I extend my sincere gratitude to all of them for giving me such a wonderful idea. To start with, I would like to begin with a question to you. Which of the following is the most recent nuclear disaster? Option A, Fukushima disaster in Japan. Option B, Chernobyl disaster in Ukraine. Option C, Three Mill Island in USA. Option D, Windscale in UK. I will wait for a few seconds before I reveal the answer. Now you can pause the video and post your answers in the comment section below. I hope you are done. And the answer is option A, Fukushima in Japan, which happened in 2011. Now let us come back to our topic, Chernobyl disaster. Chernobyl is a place in modern day Ukraine. As you know, Ukraine was a part of USSR earlier. While it was a part of USSR, it had a nuclear reactor at a place called Chernobyl. In this particular nuclear reactor, they had several reactors too, but the reactor number 4 exploded on 26th of April 1986. Now let us examine what happened at Chernobyl. On the day of explosion, The workers at reactor number 4 were trying to test a generator. What kind of a generator? A generator which was supposed to automatically start when there is a power cut. And in order to stimulate a power cut, they decided to reduce the power of reactor number 4 to 25%. And did it stop there? No, it reduced even further. And as a result, they tried to increase the power of the reactor. But it went horribly wrong. And as a result, there was a massive power surge at the reactor number 4. The emergency shutdown system failed to work and the reactor exploded. As a result of explosion, there was fire and the firefighters and safety workers arrived at the scene and they were unaware of the fact that they were subjected to high amount of radiation. According to WHO, around 50 people died on this particular day, among which most of them are rescue workers or firefighters. Apart from this, around 4,000 people lost their life due to after effects of radiation. What happened to the people in this region? They were evacuated, but most of them had to suffer from cancer. Now I'll show you some interesting image which I got from the internet. In this particular image, you can see soldiers employed on behalf of robots. The government initially tried to remove the debris from this area using robot, but unfortunately the robot failed to work. As a result, the government sent in human beings to clear the debris. They were allowed to work only for 40 seconds. See, for example, this person will be changed after 40 seconds of work. This is a similar image. Here in this picture, you can see a mom and her child getting tested for radioactivity. Now let us get into the last and final topic of our discussion. That is the future of nuclear energy. In this session, I'll share my viewpoints about the future of nuclear power. According to me, nuclear power is not going to have a bright future as a source of electricity. Friends, remember, this is my personal opinion and I said that nuclear power is not going to have a bright future only as a source of electricity. And I have 4 main reasons for my arguments. The first reason is that nuclear power plants will be very expensive and the governments will not be ready to spend such big amount when there are other alternatives available at cheaper cost. Another reason is that the governments will not be ready to take such big risk on the life and property of the people. For the same reason, whenever there is a nuclear power project brought up by the government, there will be public opposition as well. Here in this picture, you can see a woman protesting against the Kudangulam nuclear power plant, which is at Tamil Nadu. The third reason is that engineering challenges. Bringing physics into engineering was much easier on paper, but when it comes to real life, it was far more difficult and it also associated with lot of safety and security issues. My fourth argument is that management of waste. Waste management when it comes to nuclear field is very difficult. Unlike other waste, you cannot simply dispose it or recycle it. Before I elaborate a little bit on the last point, I would like to ask you a question. Here is the question. Which of the following radioactive element is not found in nature? Option A, uranium. Option B, radon. Option C, plutonium. Option C, thorium. I'll wait for a few seconds before I reveal the answer and you can pause the video and type your answers in the comment section below. The correct answer is plutonium. Why did I ask this question? Because plutonium is obtained as a byproduct or a nuclear waste from every nuclear reactor. Nowadays, the nuclear reactors actually prefer to sit on top of their own waste. What do? They will build a chamber deep under the reactor and they will store all the nuclear waste safely under this chamber. And is it safe there? For the time being, it is safe. But what about the future? Imagine for a moment that I am a terrorist. As a terrorist, what would I do? I will try to get the nuclear waste or plutonium. Why would I need that? I would like to make a nuclear weapon. For the time being, I will not be able to access the plutonium safely. But imagine after, say for example, 100 years or 70 years, with the help of technology, I was able to access it safely. Then what would I do? I will build a nuclear weapon. With that nuclear weapon, I will threaten governments across the world. I will threaten to use the nuclear power on them unless they comply with my demands. At present, there is a similar situation where the president of North Korea is threatening the entire world showing its nuclear power. The point I was trying to make is that in future there is a possibility wherein the terror groups may become nuclear powers and threaten the government across the world. That is the reason why countries like India and USA are taking strong steps against terrorism. And friends, that's the end of our discussion. Thank you very much for listening. Thank you, Dr. Pius, for giving us such a wonderful opportunity.